Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Oh, welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. We look back on a packed weekend of motorsport from all over the world, including the first sprint race of the season from China and the main race, of course, World Sports Cars in Italy, the World Rally Championship, it was in Croatia, IndyCar and IMSA, they were sports cars from a hectic weekend in Long Beach, World Superbikes and British Superbikes for the first time this season. They were in Holland, bizarrely, for British Superbikes, and also Spain, respectively. Hang on, which one was in Spain? Which one was in Holland?
You got it the wrong way around.
Yeah, the wrong way around. And then supercars from down under in New Zealand. And of course, there's always NASCAR. And this week it was Talladega, baby. So it's all happening there. We'll start off with some news. Got to start off with Formula One, as we always do. What news have you got? What gossip have you got this week, Tiff?
Well, I'm pretty gossip-free. I think there's so much motorsport going on. There's a bit of a front up, isn't it, between it's going on and on, isn't it, between Horner and Mercedes man, between Horner and Toto, where Toto's talking about, Verstappen moving to Mercedes in the future, and Horner's saying he's stopped talking rubbish, he's not going anywhere. So a little bit of friction continuing, whilst the inquests are still going on, the appeal is still being listened to by the Red Bull hierarchy somewhere. Oh dear! So that's still ticking over, but no, nothing really else happening.
Do you know what? It's really boring. It's really boring that we mention it every week. But
yes.
But likewise, it's a bit scandalous that it's being brushed under the carpet, I feel. But anyway, so but it is boring to keep talking about it. And
the process is still underway.
Yeah, I think more exciting news. I don't know whether it's exciting. I don't think he's an exciting person, but bigger news this week was Nico Rosberg. He was in the commentary booth mixed reactions, but I think generally, overall, that people thought his commentary was quite good. What did you think?
He's always a bit full of himself with a smile. He's always the sustainable. I mean, he's investing in all sorts of sustainable electric projects around the world. He's a big. He's a woke ambassador, really, whatever that word woke means. But I think we all know what it means. He's got his extreme Formula.
He's not woke. There's a completely difference to being green and eco-friendly and being woke. It's completely different.
Well, he's always smarmy and nice about everything, but then he loves his little digs at Lewis. Whenever we get a dig about Lewis, although he was supporting Lewis sometimes.
Yeah.
But when someone did a block pass, when the Ferraris had that moment in the sprint race, and he said, "Well, of course I know about Lewis does that. So Lewis did it to me." And I sometimes always begrudge him being a world champion because I don't think he was quite good enough. I was trying to work out this morning when Lewis lost that championship to him. I think that's when the engine blew up in Brazil that helped Nico get the title.
But it's never just one race, Tiff. It's not.
I know it's the whole season, but he was very close.
He was lucky. He was
the closest to Lewis of anyone, certainly closer than Valtteri. So he was an excellent racing driver, but he is always a bit. He loves sort of taking a mick whenever he can, have a little dig. But nevertheless, what he said was really good. His descriptions, what the cars are doing, his having to go at Crofty when Crofty started talking his usual bollocks. Because Crofty starts trying to analyse, doesn't he? Like as though he's an expert analyst on strategy when he hasn't got anyone to talk to about strategy. So I think a lot of people enjoyed him tripping up Crofty. My only big problem, though, was I couldn't get my volume balanced. So when a Grand Prix starts, I'm down to volume 4 for Crofty protection reasons, but then Nico was like whispering away, so I had to sort of go up to about 10 to listen to Nico. And now Crofty's too loud in my ears. So
I thought he was good. We missed Martin Brundle, not necessarily with the live commentary, but the grid walks, etc. Alex Brundle was there, which is good. I thought Nico's good, but he is quite up himself. He does like. He's
up himself. Is that another word for woke? Then,
not woke. That means he's just a bit cocky and a bit sure of himself. But anyway, back to the race. Qualifying.
Well, sprint of course
race,
first. We had the sprint first. With fascinating quali to get everybody excited because it rained, and it rained halfway through Q2. Which made it exciting. They had to get out and get the lap time in.
Love it.
And then in the Q3, everyone loved people sliding around. There was opposite lock everywhere. They were 22 seconds slower in Q3 for Croft. And this thing about, oh gosh, you've got to go 5 seconds faster because they mustn't be. And even, both Nico and Crofty, when the start of the race, was saying, this might be some rain. That's what we want to see, isn't it? Yeah, we all. So even the sort of Sky Sports commentators, I mean, nobody seems to listen to us on Twitter and everybody else saying, we want less grip, we want more sliding, we want more racing. And even Crofty and Nico are saying, yeah, we want rain. Why do we want rain? Because the racing will be better. It's not getting through. It's just not getting through. Anyway, so in that wet session, of course, we had Lando on pole and Lewis in this useless Mercedes using his skills to go second on the grid. So we had an all-British front row.
It was a bit contentious. The pole was a bit contentious in terms of having a lap time deleted.
Oh, yes. Now, that was interesting because they actually overruled a rule.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how they're allowed to overrule a rule. Because, yes, if it's the last corner of a lap that you exceed track limits, it gives you an advantage on the next lap as well as the lap you're finishing. That is the rule.
It typically gives you an advantage. Normally, almost always.
So they actually look back, and the fact that the track limits at that particular corner was a gravel trap, as they should be. So, that's what we always say, don't we? That track limits must have its self-handicapping system, either a slippery curb or grass.
Which that corner
exactly.
really did, especially Alonso in the main race. He got
had gravel.
Yeah.
So then they obviously looked at it and said, well, yes, of course, he didn't have extra speed onto the qualifying lap because he had 2 wheels on the gravel. But
but a rule's a rule. A line is a line.
That's what I mean.
Especially in Formula One.
So they've now proved that they can overrule a rule. If you they were desperately trying to avoid because someone overruled a rule in Abu Dhabi a few years ago. I understand. I'm not sure about it. Can't remember it now, but he overruled a rule. And the whole thing about the new rules is you're not allowed to overrule a rule. But anyway,
if you want to analyse crossing a line and how millimeters make a difference in our other sport that we love, football. Yesterday, semi-final.
Oh, the FA Cup. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking. They're analysing an offside, which everyone's switched off already now about talking about football offside, but by millimeters, and they ruled out a goal. But so if they can do it there, we can do it in Formula One.
But anyway, I'm so glad common sense prevailed and the lap time was allowed to stand. But then, of course, we had Lando running wide, trying to take the lead at turn 1, which dropped him back into 9th or 10th. I don't know where he finished at the end. So that spoiled his race, the sprint race. And then we had the side of Max struggling a bit, which we're all enjoying, down to about 4th and on the radio, but he hasn't got any battery power. But by the time they'd fiddled the feedback and worked out, you had to press F8 or F6 or press a number. So he cured his problem.
Control-Alt-Delete.
Yeah, it was business as usual as Max supremely came through to win the sprint. Checo Perez was back to business as usual a bit over the weekend. He couldn't follow Max through, and I don't know where he ended up in the end. And he got through the second in the end of the sprint, didn't he? Eventually, the Ferrari fight was interesting. We had another inter-team row going on as Sainz ran Leclerc off the road of the hairpin when Leclerc tried to overtake him. So that gave a bit of Ferrari anger. Who else was in there?
Lewis did very well in the sprint. You haven't mentioned Lewis Hamilton. He did very well in the sprint.
Yeah, I mentioned. Yeah, I said he finished second. I think I mentioned he came through second. Oh, I've just got a drop of a minute. Excuse me, everybody. Yeah, Lewis had a great race in the rain. He managed to pull out the gap on whoever was. No, he did finish second, of course. Yeah, Checo was he third in the end of the sprint. Then the Ferraris. Sauber's looked quick. Sauber's were quick at the weekend, and Guan Yu Zhao got 9th place in the sprint. And of course, the Chinese were going mental, weren't they? It's love to see a bit of patriotic support. And when he was battling for last place with Logan Sargent in the Grand Prix, he overtook Logan Sargent. The crowd, the grandstands were going mental.
It was like he just won the race.
Well, he had his own parking space, didn't he? Behind the 3 podium slots in the Grand Prix. Brilliant. They had a little Zhao parking slot. He was in tears.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's a nice thing.
But the problem is, this is the trouble why certain drivers have their seats. It was demonstrated very obviously why Zhao is popular with Liberty and with the world of Formula One, because they all do business. I mean, of course, now it's going to become an Audi team. The big question will be how many Audis do they sell in China? We'll probably decide whether Zhao keeps his seat or not. Or whether,
It's quite interesting about car sales and how they correlate. Tesla over the weekend just announced this. They're reducing their price globally by about 15%. because, of course, all the Chinese are just flooding the market with cheap electric cars,
I know.
much more cost effective. So now they're saying, oh, actually, we won't make so much money, and we'll save you 50%. But you imagine if you bought a Tesla last week and you took delivery of the Tesla for 15%.
Well, I've got someone that's bought one of those Audis saying the same story. He's got an Audi on contract, and that's dropped its value because they've dropped the prices or something. But it is lovely. China that emits more pollution to the rest of the world. It's no good sitting in the street in London. You've got to go and sit outside the Chinese embassy. You've got to save the planet. And yet they're going to make a fortune flogging us little electric boxes.
The irony.
Oh, I know, the irony. So it was an entertaining sprint race, sort of. There's lots of stuff's going on.
Lewis and Zhao got massive applause from the audience. It wasn't just Zhao, Lewis as well. It shows how popular he is over there.
Yeah, he's still popular around the world, isn't he? So anyway, it was successful. It was a good weekend in China, really. I mean, because the Grand Prix was okay. Qualifying, of course, Hamilton went from hero to zero.
Oh, I thought it was so boring. Such a boring Grand Prix.
But there was enough with the safety cars to just about keep it enough.
Oh, I disagree. There's hardly any overtaking. There's a little bit of overtaking in the mid and backfield.
There was quite a lot.
Like you said, with Zhao and Sargent going for 19th place or 18th place.
Well, Magnussen was adding his own bit of midfield entertainment, clobbering poor old Yuki off and then having a huge bounce. With Stroll, he had went 3 corners side by side. There was enough going on because, of course, Checo having got through to second, got pushed back with all the safety cars. Hamilton being out, of course. Hamilton coming through the pack, but he didn't really. He was only 0.8 of a second off of the fastest time in Q1 to get knocked out of Q1. It shows how tight it all is, isn't it? 0.8. And he was 16th and out, or 18th, whatever it was.
0.8 is quite a lot, though, isn't it?
Well, not for a whole grid. 0.8 to your teammate is massive, but for a whole grid. Of course, Stroll didn't make Q2, although then he was only 0.2 slower than Alonso, who was 7th in Q1. But again, another Lance Stroll. We'll come to him again later because he was part of the entertainment of the Grand Prix. Max was 0.3 quicker than Checo. So again, Checo was a bit off the pace. Alonso, just still amazes everywhere he seems. Every weekend he does something. Qualified 3rd, McLaren's 4th and 5th. Ferrari had a bad weekend, didn't they? Qualified 6 and 7, slightly better in the race. George, you see, keeps his head down with the Mercs and qualified 8th. Hulkenberg 9th. Hulk's going so well. He must be, I think, an Audi's number 1 choice German driver, showing his wealth. And the fact the Haas is going well is good news for maybe Ollie Behrman, who we're hoping will have that drive next year. And he won't be in a completely rubbish car by the looks of it. But there was plenty going. It was inevitable Max win, another just ridiculous. I mean, the lead he gets on the opening lap, it's what Jim Clark used to do. He used to break the 1.5 seconds. So he's out. Now they move VAR to 1 second. I thought that might let them keep with Max for a bit longer.
VAR,
not
VAR. And DRS.
Now they moved DRS to the first lap. We had hope. A day's gone. He just goes.
I can't believe it. He pulls it out in like 3 corners. He's done a second on especially after a safety car restart and stuff. It's incredible.
But the race was it was all about Lando, really. Lando was the superstar of the race, amazing pace. He'd bet with his engineer that he'd be 20 seconds behind the Ferraris. I think he had no confidence in the car for some reason because they had so little tested, didn't they? They didn't do many race simulations because it was wet and it was sprint race and it was sprint qualifying. So it was great to see them. Piastri had a bad time. He faded back to 8th place. Ferrari recovered to 4th and 5th, sort of where they normally are. George beat Alonso this time. Normally, it's always Alonso George for first behind the Ferraris. It was the same pattern as always. That's the sad thing. But Alonso, and he didn't like the soft tyres in the mid-stint, and he dropped right back. Lewis cut through to 9th. Lewis Hamilton, those first 3 laps, he didn't overtake anybody.
Well, he went backwards.
He put on a soft tyre. Well, yeah, because Sargent was in the pits, wasn't he? He was on a soft tyre, but he said the soft tyre didn't work. Other people love the soft tyre, so who knows what's going on.
But he got lucky with the safety cars, and it was it was a nothing race. They said, "Oh, Lewis, amazing, 18th to 9th or whatever he finished, 9th, 10th."
Well, no, it should be. But when we then had of course, we had the Lance Stroll moment. He just, we all knew how it happened. You can see how it happens. Yes, you're all bottling up in a very tight hairpin, ready for a restart, but you've got to be prepared to stop before you hit anyone. He called it a joke, being penalised. So when you go to the back of someone at the traffic lights next week and then the police stop, you just say, well, I think it's a joke, mate. He stopped in front of me. So I hit him. And Lance he's got this full spoilt child opinion on the world, doesn't he? The world's, he thought there was nothing wrong with slamming into the back of Ricciardo so hard that he lifted him up in the air. In fact, Ricciardo went to the back of whoever was in front of him. I think it was that Piastri damaged his suspension.
But Ricciardo in the pits afterwards, someone said, Lance blamed you. And he said, oh, I was calming down and now I'm really pissed off to hear that. And But Lance, sadly, you can't. I'm surprised that everybody keeps. You do by instinct and on a safety car restart, but we all sort of keep in line. But why don't we go from on one side or the other side instead of keeping in line? I know you want to stay on the racing line.
The trouble is the hairpin. I mean, this is what slightly annoys me that I don't like the Formula One. Is this allowing the leader to pick when he restarts? In America they go around 2 by 2, and they come to a start zone and then they go, which is virtually on the start-finish line, so they start as a pack.
Yeah.
But this system we have of, letting the leader. So the problem is everybody from 6th downwards knew that he was going to go on the straight before the last corner. So you had to take the racing line into the hairpin on the left to make sure you went with the pack. Because if you'd been inside Ricciardo, say you'd been on the inside of the hairpin, he couldn't have accelerated quickly out of the hairpin.
But
there is a reason.
I know, but those cars are going so slow. That hairpin's such a slow corner, and you can't overtake until you get to the start-finish line anyway. So
no, but you want to go with the pack still. Yeah, he could have lost anyway. The idiot crashed, and Ricciardo's weekend went even worse. He's got his new chassis, so he out-qualified Yuki. Yuki had all sorts of problems in qualifying. I think that he was outrunning Yuki in the race. He overtook Yuki in the race, so he was having a good race. With poor old desperate to get back into Red Bull next year. And not only did he get slammed by Stroll, he then in the second pace car overtook Hulkenberg deliberately. This didn't come out in the race at the time because Hulkenberg had somehow undercut him in the first pace car. So Daniel thought he should be ahead of Hulkenberg for the restart. He shouldn't have been. And he's now got a 3-place grid penalty for Miami. So things did go from good to very, very bad. And even worse for poor old Daniel, who everybody loves Daniel. So, I thought it was an all right race. You thought it was a bore, but I thought there was just about enough going on to make it entertaining.
It was so dull.
Yeah,
so dull. Two safety cars saved it.
Six
make
or
it
seven.
An average race. Right.
Done
Where we go next? What's
done
next?
for them. World Rally Championship. Wonderfully
Croatia.
entertaining. If you're on the side of a road watching them all leap and bound past you. And I've gone to, no, WEC. Missed out a whole page of my notes. The best entertainment award goes to the World Endurance Championship of the weekend with their Imola round 2 of the World Endurance Championship with these hypercars. 19 hypercars, 18 GT3s, whatever it is. And it was just a huge battle, mainly because the weather changed. There is this huge problem with the balance of power with world sports cars. He did lots of changes again. You can have 2 more horsepower and you can have 3 millimeters more air intake and you can have 1 millimeter more ride height. I don't know. It's such fine tuning because, of course, the Porsches dominated the Qatar round 1. They finished first, second, and third. And the Porsches aren't even hypercars. They're Le Mans, they're Daytona hypercars or GTPs, they call them. So there's a difference in the regulations of the 2 types of cars. You're trying to balance 2 different regulations anyway. Ferrari were given some extra power, as well as Toyota, the most struggling. And Ferrari qualified first, second, and third in Italy. So all of a sudden, it looked like the balance of power twisted too far. But Porsche was still 4th and 5th on the grid, so they maintained their place. And the Toyotas, the supreme champions of the past, only qualified 6th and 8th and was still 1 second off the pace. So looks like the balance of power will have to be tweaked again. Because as they get near Le Mans, some teams actually don't want too much to happen because they've been sandbagging. They're always accused of being sandbagging. So you arrive at Le Mans and then you show your full pace. So it was all interesting. But then there was a huge shunt at turn 1 because of 19 hypercars, that ridiculous turn 1 at Imola, which has got that slight kink in the road before you brake for a very sharp left-right hairpin. So almost inevitably, it was like from 10th place backwards in the hypercars, which is ping-ponging off each other. But then there was this amazing. It then started raining halfway through. Ferraris were dominating. Then the rain came, and the Ferrari boys decided to stay out. All three of them, because it's a private car as well. And the Toyota decided to come in and put wets on. So there was this strategy. Amazingly, neither did sort of one car wets, one car stay out on slicks. But the Ferrari stayed out on slicks, and I think that's what lost them the race. Martin Haven. We got Anthony Davidson. I presume he's been fully dropped by Sky F1. Now we see the new studio thing. So I think Ant's not in any Formula One, which I didn't know before this. So he's now signed up to the World Endurance Championships. We had the wonderful insight of Ant, who I thought was the best analyst on Sky as well. But he's obviously been dropped for the Formula One. But
does he do any racing anymore? Or just commentary now? Is he retired?
Just commentary now. He simulators for Mercedes. He's on a simulator for someone. But Martin Haven, the lovely Martin Haven, he was doing his best impressions of Formula One commentary.
Brundle? Crofty?
Of Crofty. He was doing his best Crofty. When he got too excited for him, I love Martin because he speaks with such enthusiasm, but he's a real fan. He's not a commentator somewhere else. He's a real racing fan. But he got obsessed with it. He was saying, Ferrari shouldn't have done that. Ferrari made the wrong thing. They should have stayed out. And he got more and more obsessed with it. So calm down, Martin. And was trying to calm him down, but he went mental. Anyway, the decision to switch to wets when it first rained, because it wasn't really wet. It was just greasy, drizzly wet. That gave the race to the Toyotas in a way and ruined it for Ferrari. There was just people going off everywhere into the gravel. They're all slicks and wet. So of course, when they were out there, where the racing lines,
such a fast track, I guess, as well.
Yeah,
fast corners.
They have a really well-disciplined full course yellow system where you're warned that you've got to go down to 80 kilometres, and it's like in 5, 4, 3. Because you've got all these GTCs and sports cars, and they all go down to 80. You can't pit, so you don't have this ridiculous gaining an advantage under the safety car system. I think they had one full course safety car when they were bunched up, but in general, they managed to go get the crane in, pick the car up, take it out. So there were a lot of cars going off into the gravel. So that, and it works really well because they didn't muck around. It lasted for about 10 minutes, instead of this usual full course yellow that takes half an hour to reassemble everyone.
Which, sorry to go back to Formula One, but it amazed me how long the safety cars were out, considering there was such minor stuff on the track.
I know. Well, it takes so long to make the decision. That's the other trouble.
I know. They're all scared stiff. Tiff, with the balance of power in sports cars, is it done on on final position, or is it done on lap times?
I think it's probably on lap times. I would have thought they look at the lap times, the average lap time of all the Ferraris, the average lap time of all the Toyotas, the average of all the other. Because you've got so many different manufacturers, BMWs and Lamborghinis and Peugeots. You think
you're supposed to be an analyst expert, and you think. People are tuning in from all over the world to listen to your expert opinion and advice.
I'm just telling people it's complicated, all right? It's complicated. Nothing like
Somebody please let us know below. Somebody more intelligent than us, please let us know below.
But we had an amazing end to the race. I mean, because all this strategy is going on. There's lots of massive amount of overtaking and people with wet tyres and slick tyres coming. In fact, when they restarted the race after the first full course safety, when the Ferraris didn't pit, the Toyotas pitted. And no, they hadn't pitted yet, so Toyotas at the front. The lead car with the restart, hypercar, was overtaken by a GT3 Porsche because he just couldn't get any grip with his slick tyres in the wet. So it was quite a sight to see the leader overtaken by a GT3 car. So much going on.
Doesn't happen very often, does it?
No. But the final stick, Kamui Kobayashi, they'd fueled quite early for the final run to try and make it to the finish line without stopping for a splash and dash in the leading Toyota. And he had to lift and coast a lot. He was trying to fuel save to keep it. And he was being caught hand over fist by the two Penske Porsches that eventually finished second and third. The best Ferrari got through to fourth, the best Toyota fifth, and the best BMW sixth. But they were just all covered by, I thought I'd written it down somewhere, but hardly anything at the end, just a whole pack racing. So after 6 hours, it was 7 seconds, covered the first 4, I think it was. So it was really good. Weaving through the GT3 traffic. It's just great spectacle.
Yeah, it is. It's good to watch. And good to watch and also good to listen, because speaking about sports cars, I told you I listened to your podcast on the Intercooler. You did that with Frankel and Prosser.
Yeah.
Mate, it was so good. I've heard all these stories and I know all these stories, but it was so good hearing it from someone else's perspective. And if you haven't listened to it, check it out on the intercooler, because it's such a good. I was really emotional when you're talking about that moment where you stood on the podium after all those years of racing sports cars. It was really, really good. And we've also had lots of feedback about the Group C item on Amazon Prime as well. So really,
Amazon Prime, don't forget, on the road on Amazon Prime. Watch it. You might get more, hopefully. Amazing reliability-wise, despite all this rain and people in the gravel are bouncing off tyre walls. 17 of the 19 hypercars finished in the top 17 places. One hypercar was still running at last. Only one retirement out of those 19 very complex hypercars. And 16 of the GT3s, 18 GT3s finished. Sadly, the Iron Dames Lamborghini was one of the two retirements. They qualified fifth as well. Really good job, but sadly they went out. So in the end, GT3 was a 1-2 for BMW. Porsches were third and a Ferrari was fourth. So great entertainment, thank you. But please, Martin Haven, calm it down a bit, Martin. But I love you, Martin. Calm it down a bit. Calm it down.
World Rally Championships from Croatia.
Yeah, an amazing rally just for three drivers. This is sometimes it only takes two racing cars to have a dice. Amazing 3 days. Thierry Neuville, we went into the final day with a tiny lead over Elfyn Evans. That was the Hyundai versus the Toyota. And Sebastian Ogier, having one of his occasional outings for Toyota, was running third. By the end of day one, Neuville and Elfyn were equal after a whole day of driving flat out. They couldn't be split by a thousandth of a second.
Wow, no way.
And at the end of Saturday, a whole day's
even
rally
happened before?
Might have done, I don't know, but that's a good point. At the end of Saturday, Neuville had eked out a 4.9 second lead over a whole day of all that leaping and hairpins and unbelievable. Wow. And Ogier didn't seem to be quite on the pace. He was just hanging in there in third place. But they're all covered by 10 seconds or something. And then on the final day on Sunday, both Elfyn and Thierry had big offs. Actually, Elfyn's was caught on camera. Really narrow, long right-handy. There was mud at the end of the road, and it's tarmac, but it's that's the worst thing. He does this 360 spin without clobbering hardly anything. Incredible they get away with things. Neuville was a bit worse. He understeered off into the forest. But they both came back on. But then Ogier, the great experienced Ogier, just popped to the top and took the rally from them. Elfyn came second and Neuville was third. But very, very close, very exciting. But again, it's always that fact you can't see the race, can you? You just look at the stopwatch all the time. But they're so spectacular. I think sometimes those narrow tarmac rally stages with grass on the edge, they're almost more exciting because you can see them. And they're so near to disaster because you get slicks on wet grass or something. There had a bit of rain and showers and stuff. Great stuff.
So you're excited about WRC now?
Well, only when you have a close rally, but I'm still frustrated by it. It's only 8 cars, and 2 of them are sort of third driver cars, as it were. So there's only really 6 drivers. 4 aren't quick enough. So basically, you're down to sort of 4 drivers that can win it: 2 Toyota drivers or 2 Hyundai drivers, which I suppose is a bit like Formula 1. But there's only 2 drivers that can win it. The ones that are in Red Bulls.
Well, there's only one driver really that wins it. Because the Red Bull, he's beatable. If it wasn't for Max Verstappen in Formula 1, we would be having the most epic season. Epic season. I know. People talk about Lando would have just won his first Grand Prix, and Checo would have won a couple. I know. Yeah, but he's beatable even in the Red Bull. He's beatable by Lando.
Exactly, someone mentioned this before, I think in the commentary. I think Nico might have said it. What a year it would have been so far without Max's brilliance. It's just incredible. Over in America, they had the Indycar and IMSA one weekend, wonderful weekend to be in Long Beach, California, in the sunshine. They have those IMSA cars going around the amazing tight street track. They had a sprint race on the Saturday where Cadillac came first and second. They had one car in the World Championship, which only finished 10th, I think, at Imola the same weekend. But 3rd, 4th, and 5th Porsches. Get a Porsche, which you can buy a customer car. You could buy one for Lovecars. Run it for us in the world and a few £1 million.
We can't buy a push bike, let alone a Porsche.
And the BMW was 6th, and it was a great race on the Saturday. So you're watching your IndyCar qualifying on the Saturday, then you watch the IMSA sports car race. They were banging off the doors, and GT3s again, so you're overtaking traffic all the time, which is always what makes endurance racing so exciting. When Lexus took the GT3 honours with a BMW second and a Mercedes third. So that was your warm-up on the Saturday, down the bars of Long Beach for Saturday night, and off you come Saturday morning, the IndyCar race, where Felix Rosenqvist got on pole position. I've been a huge Felix fan for 10 years or something. He was a real Formula 3 star. He was employed by Lance Stroll. What's Stroll's dad? What's his dad's name? In the Prayment. They gave him an extra season in Formula 3 to make Lance champion, which he succeeded in doing. So Felix had to give the place away, hold him up, and give Stroll. We both forgotten Danny Stroll. You get as bad as me now remembering names. So Rosenqvist, to me, should have been another one that missed out on Formula 1. But he was on pole, and he was on pole with this little Meyer Shank team, which is like a smaller team. I don't know who else raced. I don't know whose place he took. But because this is what I love about IndyCar. His pole position was like Alboming on pole in a Williams. It was that much of a shock because there's all the big teams of Penske and Andretti and the other one. And yet he put it on pole. But sadly dropped back lap after lap. I think he dropped back and eventually finished ninth. He didn't seem to have the race pace at all. Sadly, the whole blooming watching the race, because I love watching cars around Long Beach. They can't overtake much. It's a proper street circuit, so there isn't much overtaking. But you see them so closely. You see opposite lot with black tyres coming. It's just more exciting to watch one IndyCar going on a racetrack than it is a Formula 1 car. Simple as that.
His father's name, sorry, Tiff, his father's name, because everyone will be shouting at their screens or whatever. It was Lawrence, but I had to Google it. I couldn't even think.
Lawrence Stroll. No, I didn't know that either. Anyway, the worst part about it was ruined my enjoyment of IndyCars because the onboard soundtrack was out of sync with the camera you were on. So it seemed to be locked on one car on some other part of the track. So whereas you're enjoying these onboards, we used to hear them when the wheels spin and the oversteer comes on. Instead, the guy was changing down a gear when he should be going full throttle. But Tom Gaymore, who does he's from in the London studio, he fills in when IndyCar goes to adverts. And he did apologise. He tried to say we'd tried to do something about it, but the whole race, they couldn't stop the onboards. And even when the commentators were commentating, the onboard was in the background and you look at the pitch and it's out of sync. Drove me mad. Anyway, the big thing about Long Beach, it always is a strategy race. And it's always about sometimes you have to do your strategy when there's a full course yellow. So you've got to quickly make your mind up. Should we come in early? And change because they have the softer tyres that start longer. They have the alternatives. They have two tyres they have to use. One's quite a bit quicker than the other, but doesn't last so long. So the strategy happened. They had a full course yellow. There weren't enough full course yellows for a lot of the strategists. And lap 15, and sort of half the bottom half of the top 10 came in to change tyres and fuel up, whereas the sort of top 8 stayed out. And they didn't pit for another 15 laps. So Scott Dixon, who was one of the ones to come in, who's famous for saving fuel, the amazing driver, he was just running around about 8th place. But then the top 8 all then peeled in 15 laps later. He's now in front. But he's now got to do 2 really long stints on his fuel allowance. And he's just so famous for doing this. And it built up and built up. He was just leading after all the final stops, but he had obviously stopped earlier because he had the different fuel strategy. And he was just saving fuel. And this pack of the other strategists were all catching him up. At the end of the race, they were covered by, I think it was 4 seconds across the line. So Scott Dixon made it to the end, holding off up the front, using his gear, pushed it past, just real strategic driving. But he had Colton Herta, Alex Palou, Josef Newgarden, and Marcus Ericsson all line astern behind him by the end of the race. 1 or 2 more laps, and he would have probably been overwhelmed. So it was a very exciting end of the race. Not much overtaking. Again, you can't always have overtaken in a circuit. The way it just doesn't suit. But obviously, there is more possibility than at Monaco. It was Théo Pourchaire. I meant to mention it. I don't know where he finished. He finished 10th. Théo Pourchaire, who should be in the Sauber Formula 1 and not Guan Yu Zhao. Sorry to have to say that, but that's a simple fact of life. He's the Sauber Academy driver who's got sent out to flip in Japan to race in Super Formula to try and keep his career alive, having dominated Formula 3 and Formula 2. But there's this McLaren driver, whose name I forget, who broke his wrist, and so they've got a substitute driver, and Pourchaire was in. He only qualified about 20, I think. He'd never driven an IndyCar before, or Long Beach. So his first lap in an IndyCar was around Long Beach.
Wow.
I think he finished respectable 12th or something. I can't remember exactly.
You'd prefer that than an oval, though, wouldn't you?
For a debut, yes, I think you prefer that for a debut, because he's raced at Monaco in Formula 2 cars, so he's done street circuits. But, afterwards, he just said how much he loved IndyCar, because the driver was making a difference. He was overtaking. He came up through quite a few places and moved up to the pack and didn't. Where did he finish? Go and find out. IndyCar results. No, all right, later. So anyway, Theo Pourchaire had a great run. But it was really good, apart from the soundtrack that ruined the entertainment if you watched it, as well as me. You would be annoyed by it.
World Superbikes, Holland.
World Superbikes. Yeah, World Superbikes.
So we had World Superbikes in Holland, and I got it wrong in the intro. And then we had British Superbikes in Spain.
Yes. So, again, it's this Razgatlioglu show. He now has to get the MotoGP. He'll probably be rubbish at the MotoGP bike. It's amazing sometimes these superbike blokes get on the MotoGP, and they've just got such a different riding style that they can't adapt. But I'm sure Toprak could. Around the amazing... what's the Assen track? Which one I mentioned when I said motorbikes didn't look right around Kota. Assen was one track. It's just a great racing track for bikes. Really, there's sort of 130 mile an hour S-bends and then hairpins and chicanes. But it was a wonderful story. The first race, it rained while they're on the grid, or drizzled. A lot of drizzle around Imola and this weekend, and drizzle in China as well. Anyway, this guy called Nicola Spinelli, Italian boy. He was only substitute. He's the very first superbike race ever. And Daniel Petrucci has crashed and hurt himself they all hurt themselves going out on bikes on off-road and break wrists and things. So anyway, he qualified 11th, which was pretty impressive. He's a Moto2, Moto3 driver. He's done super sports.
That's still bloody impressive.
So anyway, he decided to go on intermediates. Whereas all the big boys thought they could survive on slicks because it looked like it might stop raining. Half the track was dry and half was wet.
I wonder if that because he was having a bit of 5p, 10p on the grid. I wonder if he's thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want to go out on wet.
Intermediates front and rear and just stormed into the lead from 11th on the grid in about 2 laps. And he pulled out this 24-second lead after about 7 or 8 laps. And then it started drying and the rain didn't come again. So then we had Razgatlioglu and Bautista, the 2 main riders, BMW and Ducati, Turkey versus Spain. They started catching him at 1 second a lap, and then 2 seconds a lap. And I think they were catching about 6 seconds a lap. And they'd got to about 6 seconds behind him. So the dream was going to be over and Spinelli was going to be swamped by the pack. But then someone's engine blew and laid down a whole trail of oil. And bikes, as soon as it's oil, you red flag. You don't muck about with oil if you're on bikes. And they'd just done 2/3 distance, which is the qualified distance. So they check and flagged it. And then he won it.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's a wonderful story. A really good story.
Fantastic.
We then have the Super Bowl race, which is the shorter. A Super Bowl race, I think, does the grid for the final race. I'm not quite sure. They call it Super Bowl race. But it's a sprint race where they start on sticky, sort of softer tyres. And Razgatlioglu couldn't handle those. He didn't like them at all. He dropped to 9th. The Toprak only finished 9th, which meant to put him on the grid 9th for the main race. But Bautista had this most amazing drive. He got pushed out wide early on. He dropped back to about 11th, I think, or somewhere way back. And his teammate, Nicola Buleja, was running away with it. And Bautista just overtook everybody. He was like going 2 seconds a lap quicker than anybody else on slicks. Incredible ride. Took the lead and won the sprint race, the Super Bowl race, ahead of Buleja. Alex Lowe's came good 3rd for Britain. His Kawasaki top brackets at 9th. But in the main race, more rain and drizzle halfway through the race. And Toprak came through with the most amazing ride, dicing. I suppose when I say Imola was most entertaining, I say Imola, well, yeah, superbikes, they were pretty impressive. So Toprak came through to win. Bautista was 2nd. A fabulous battle. There was this other guy, another wonderful story. Remy Gardner, who's the son of Wayne Gardner, 500cc world champion several times. He won Moto2. There's almost a story like Theo Pourchaire, He won what you're supposed to win to get promoted to MotoGP. KTM did give him 1 year MotoGP, but then dropped him. So he had 1 year in Formula 1 and then got dropped. So he's switched to superbikes and he hasn't won yet, and this was actually his first podium. It's his second season in Superbikes. So a wonderful, good story there from Remy Gardner to come through. So, just entertainment, bikes, entertainment. Sorry, cars.
Well, there's loads of overtaking. It's very close, and you can see what's happening as well. You can see the riders, so you can really engage with that as well. So British Superbikes, where were they in Spain? Was it
Navarro?
Oh yeah,
up in the Rioja region. I went there testing and did a car test. And we stayed in a weird Gaudi hotel. What's the name of that weird designer?
Yeah,
Gaudi. Yeah. And drank a lot of Rioja, thanks to whoever I was out there with. So Navarro. And the worst thing is there's no beer monster Ducatis this year. The beer monsters have withdrawn their beer. They're now Hager Ducatis or Hager Ducatis. I'll find out how to pronounce it. Anyway, it wasn't a Ducati track by the sounds of it, because the Yamahas came storming through. Race 1 was Ryan Vickers ahead of Kyle Ryder and Danny Kent. And the best Hager Ducati was 4th. And the second race, again, Vickers won again, Kent was 2nd, and Ryder was 3rd. So it was Yamaha 1, 2, 3 in both races. Leon Haslam had a 4th place in the second race, and the best Hager beer monster Ducati was down in 8th. So that, was lots of good races. I didn't watch it all, I must admit. I've done a lot to this through the weekend. But there was a lot of it. I think apparently
too busy watching Southampton at Cardiff.
No, don't mention Southampton. We haven't got to mention Southampton. Apparently Vickers nearly dropped it on the last lap of the last corner, last lap in the second race. And there was plenty of excitement, as always, with bikes. They're coming home. So British bikes started thing. So as the British motorbikes were in Spain, the Australian supercars were in New Zealand. Again, it's this Ford versus Camaro battle that goes on, which is the sort of interesting thing. Ford were on pole position for both the two races, in fact. Cam Waters was on pole for race 1, but 3 Camaros were right behind him. And of course, the story of the reigning champion, Brody Kostecki, coming back after having a row with sponsors and row with his team and falling out. But he only qualified 15th, finished 16th in race 1, which was very wet, very wet. And the Kiwi, home hero, Andre Heimgartner, won it in a Camaro. He's only second winner in 11 seasons.
What's a Camaro? I know you're posh. You're a lot posher than me.
Chevrolet Camaro.
It's a Camaro, surely.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
Is that how they say it? Is that how the Americans say it, or the Australians?
I've never had this challenge. I've just always said Camaro.
And you, really, technically speaking, you shouldn't say Ford versus Camaro or Camaro. It should be.
Well, it's Mustangs. The Mustangs,
exactly.
Yeah, Mustangs.
It should be Ford versus Chevrolet or
all right.
Camaro versus Mustang.
Right.
No. You're complaining about all these other bloody commentators, so you've got to get your facts right, son.
No, I've got to say, and he was a Kiwi as well, Andre Heimgartner. I'll say his name again now. So he won that race, and the Camaros were 2nd and 3rd, I think.
I don't know whether it's Camaro. I just think it's I've always said Camaro. You said no. Now you got me. Move on.
Anyway, Ford were on pole for the second race as well with Max Payne. But again, the Camaros were 2nd and 3rd. Brody Kostecki actually qualified 3rd for the second race, showing a bit more of his old form, but ended up finishing 12th. And the Red Bull Chevrolets came back. The dominant Red Bull Chevrolet Camaros had a 1-2 finish in the second race with Will Brown beating Brock Feeney, and both increasing their lead at the championship. They 1-2, Brown ahead of Feeney in the standings. So first race in the rain, we had a nice little home hero win, and the second race was back to normal with the Red Bull dominance.
Any many international drivers?
No, none sadly down there. There might be one. I haven't done a check. Because
probably some from Asia, I'd imagine, but I'll look into
that. It's pretty much Kiwis and Aussies, I think.
Okay.
It's a long way to go.
I like that you can say Kiwis and Aussies and they're not even remotely offended, like if we're called Pommies or whatever they want to call us. But that's the way it should be. You shouldn't have to worry about whether you call someone.
Careful.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on from that as well. Yeah. So finally, last but not least, Talladega.
Always that NASCAR's come last but not least. And Talladega, baby. Not the most exciting race. I had to go times 30 for about 90% of it. A bit of a story up front, of course, with Kyle Larson, the greatest driver in the world. his mechanics, after scrutineering, I mean, the little tricks they play. I remember in the olden days, for aero, it's all for aero. And there used to be the mechanic, when they changed the rear wheels, they would put their hip into the wing or the fender in front of the wheel to dent it in to give another tenth of a mile an hour. And that was one of the big tricks. They used to get caught out. You could see the mechanic deliberately putting his hip into the thing. Anyway, whilst pushing Kyle's car from the scrutineering to the qualifying pit lane, they sometimes, I don't know what, they bent or changed the roof rail. So you can see them on the car. They've actually got little roof rails each side. I don't know, somehow they pushed it sideways. Anyway, all disqualified. The chief mechanic they throw them out of the circuits the weekend, which I quite like. Instead of a football manager that has to go up into the stands, they literally you're out. They take your credentials away. You have to go home and watch the race on the telly. So he didn't have a qualifying time. So he not only had to start at the back, but the end of lap one, or as soon as he had to drive through the pit lane as well. So it was quite a big punishment.
Yeah.
So with the others all doing 200 miles an hour around the first lap, he came out a lap behind. So he's now at the back of the pack and a lap down. But the lovely thing about NASCAR, you can still get to the front. The first car not on the lead lap gets always a lap back. So the lucky dog. So, of course, he was the only car a lap behind early on. So he soon got back on the same lap. And then with about 20 laps, there he's at the front of the field, dicing for the lead. So you've gone from this guy that was a lap and a half behind. And they could all do that in NASCAR. Strategy, it's just brilliant. Anyway, it was quite a tame race all the way around. There was one shunt early on when a couple of pattern markers got into each other. But then there was this big crash when the Toyotas, because when they pit with these big super speedway races, because you've got to get up to speed and have someone with you, because, you know, when Larson was on his own, they were just catching. He wasn't actually a lap behind when he rejoined the track, but he's running 20 miles an hour slower than the pack. And so literally he was in front. You just saw this monster pack slowly catching him up. And then they just all whistled past him. He just kept left because he's going 20 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour slower on his own. So when you pit, you have to pit with friends. So all the manufacturers get their Toyotas or their Chevrolets or their Fords to peel into the pits at the same time. And a bit of a laugh when Dirty Den coming in with the Toyotas spun.
Whoa. Why do they do that?
So then they go out as a pack. So then with 10 cars, you can go the same speed
absolutely
as the pack.
Like
so you have to go out as a pack. You're like a full speed peloton.
Yeah.
Dirty Den spun coming in with the Toyotas, which gave a bit of a fun Hamlin. Anyway, the little traders, only not so many Toyotas. There was only about 5 of them or 6 of them got together. And they're trying like mad to catch up with the 10 packs of 10 and the Chevrolet 10 and the Ford 10. It's all strategy. And they were going nose to tail, but they went over this little bump there is coming out of turn 3. It's always wherever there's a tunnel in a NASCAR oval track, there always seems to be a bump because the tunnel causes a bit of subsidence. But anyway, they all got a bit out of kilter. They all had this massive shunt, which killed off 4 of the Toyotas, put them out, including Dirty Den. So I enjoyed that. Sorry, Mr. Hamlin, but you know, you just played some dirty tricks. So that pretty much killed the Toyota battle off. And then we had this long, pretty sort of 2x2 run towards the finish. No real peril going on. Nobody really able to make a move. And Mike McDowell of the Ford was out front. And he had his mate Brad Keselowski in the Fords pushing him. So you always have your pusher on your one side. They do this amazing trick because you push them. This is all at 200 miles an hour. You go about 1 mile an hour faster than the other lane. And as soon as he was ahead of the lane on the outside, what you do is you move up now. So you move up in front of the opposition. And then you sort of hold them back. Then once you've stalled their 1 mile an hour extra speed, you drop back in front of your mate, Keselowski. He pushes you forward to get 1 mile an hour faster. And then you go back up the other lane and hold them back. And then you drop back. It's amazing 200 mile an hour chess.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when it comes to the last lap, you know, even Keselowski, he wants to win. Okay, I don't know. I've been pushing you and helping you, Mr. McDowell, but you know, now I want to go for my bit. And he deliberately drops away. It's the last lap. You drop away from the one you've left. So you leave him on his own. So he now slows down because he hasn't got the aero pushing him, that little bit of air or even the nose of the car. So Keselowski then got a push from the third in the inside line. So then that pushes him down. He's now going 2 miles an hour faster than McDowell, who's now left on his own. So, of course, if you left on your own, you then have to weave up and weave down. And coming to the line, he weaved up to block the people coming on in the right-hand lane. Then he weaved down again to stop Keselowski. But I think they just touched, or else he just lost control because he was weaving at 200 miles an hour. And I think he did just touch Keselowski, turned him sharp right in front of a pack of 40 cars, and the big one happened. But normally one of these happens in 20 laps to go when they're beginning to.
Yeah, I saw the carnage.
Practice. But anyway, so massive shunts all over the place. And even, as luck would have it, it was a Toyota that cruised through from the back, who found the gaps. Tyler Reddick. So Tyler Reddick, one of the only surviving Toyotas, was the man to take it. Thank you very much, and cruise through to win by half a length while the rest of the pack wrecked behind him. So a dramatic end, but
dramatic end to a boring race.
Well, it's this high-speed chess. The commentary's great. They're filling you in all the time. If you're at the racetrack, of course, you've got your headset on, so you can listen to any crew talk going on. You can go up and down anyone in the race and listen to what they're saying about their strategies and how they're going to make it. But
good stuff. What's on next week, Tim?
Long day. Yeah, the MotoGP is probably the headline next weekend. We've got in Spain. I don't know which Spain is it. Must be Barcelona. It must be Barcelona. I didn't look up. Although IndyCar would be quite good. Well, again, another track we don't overtake. Barber Motorsport, wonderful, undulating, beautiful grey track with green grass each side of it and hardly any gravel traps, but flowing and fast. Wonderful to drive on your own. This is the trouble with some of these tracks, Suzuka. We all love driving these tracks, but difficult overtaking. But it's got the NXT, their Formula 2 cars, also at Barber Motorsport next weekend. So, of course, we've got Jamie Chadwick and Louis Foster, who's up the front of the championship, coming out again, both race for Andretti. So we've got to see how Jamie's getting on, who I had a long chat to at Goodwood. I raced against, of course, she was in a Mustang. We sat and had a long chat. She's wonderful. She knows what she's at.
She's lovely.
Yeah, she's very clever.
Yeah.
She's trying to get better. I think she's looking at GTs and looking at hypercars, for the future. She knows that's, she's not going to be a Grand Prix driver. She's not that stupid.
Did she kick your ass in her Mustang?
Yeah, she was great. She was sliding around like, I don't know how quick her car was. I mean, she was behind her. She was behind me, but not just, but I don't know how quick her car was.
Not on merit. She had a slower car.
But I saw some onboard of her, driving, giving it a full on. When she was driving it really well. She's wringing the best out of it. So good luck to Jamie. She qualified 10th, I think, at the last one of her best, and then she got knocked off at the first lap. So she's really hoping she can get to the top 3-5, sometime this year. And NASCAR's come back down to earth with a really good high bank 1 mile at Dover. Now that should be more watchable around the Dover Bowl. Monaco's, I think some people get invites. I can't believe there are some sort of influencers that get all these free trips. Do you know anyone that's going to Monaco this weekend as an influencer on a freebie?
I might be going with Cooper to watch Formula E, to do a journalistic piece on Formula E.
Right. Actually, Monaco is a better track because whereas they go to the big race circuits like Portland and where were they last time when they tried? Down in Italy. It's just this ridiculous. You can't lead because you run out of power. So this ridiculous pack of 10 all just overtake. But you can keep up a reasonable pace around Monaco. So it might be a more normal race, one hopes.
Yes,
but then
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah,
back home, you shouldn't go to Monaco because back home the British touring cars are back. So we got a great weekend. It's a shame, really, because they got their first round at Donington in the Midlands, and British GT have got their second round at Silverstone in the Midlands. If they're both in the Midlands, they are.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I would say.
So 2 wonderful British championships with great support events. Abby Eaton's making her debut in the Porsche Super Cup at Donington. She's obviously thinking GT maybe. So be good to see how she gets on. Good luck to her. Of course, you've got all the single-seater kids. You've got Ginettas and you've got all sorts. So 2 really good weekends of go spectate. Go and wave the flag.
I will be spectating and thinking of you when I'm drinking my champagne, probably on a yacht or something. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.
See you.